We kick things off with a man who is no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a pleasant good evening for the Member of Parliament for Point-a-Pierre and UNC Shadow Minister of Energy, Dr. David Lee. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mikee K. As always, a pleasure being on your program. And it has been rough over the last few days, but it's a pleasure being here tonight.
Yeah.
Just came out of Parliament.
I know you've had a long day, and I know we're going to very interesting. Before the budget presentation, you made it quite clear that you expected to see an election year budget, a budget of election goodies, which would never materialize. And of course, you made note of the budget deficit last year, and you expected similar in this budget. You said the revenues are not coming in as projected by the finance minister. Where are we now after 5 hours and some minutes for the presentation and making your contribution as well? What was your major takeaway from this?
Well, after 5 hours and 12 minutes listening to the Minister of Finance, and then listening to the Minister of Energy, I want to say that whatever I had said on your shows previously about the deficits where we would be hasn't changed in my mind. We are in no better off position listening to the Minister of Finance present his debt and hopefully his final budget. We as a country are in very difficult times in the next few months. And this government has put out a sort of a dangler carrot and say, hold straight, because 2027, 2028 at best, something good will happen to the country. After, as I said in my budget presentation, after 9 years, going to their 10th year of destruction in our economy and declines in all metrics throughout our economy, why should this population hold strain for another 3 years at best for them to deliver something that they could not have delivered in 10 years? So we are in some very difficult times, no matter how Minister of Energy Stuart Young tries to spin it, even as far as a couple hours ago when I sort of he was presenting and I was asking questions in the SSC on the Ministry of Energy. He started off with his 5-minute presentation about how good things are coming in the next 2-3 years. You'll see $10 billion being invested in this country by the energy sector. He talked about the cross-border gas situation with Venezuela and the different fields, and we start ramping up and so forth and so forth. So it is really a public relations that they are doing, in my view, and nothing positive will happen in this country unless we change this present administration.
Now, today, of course, was, I believe, day three of 5 of the Standing Finance Committee that you did mention, of course. In my opinion, a lot of the allocation is being put toward the outstanding monies owed to contractors, monies for works already done, and it appears that the monies in the allocation are not for developmental programs, but for monies owed and for works already started.
Well, let me start off by saying that these budgets that Minister of Finance presents on an annual basis over the last 9 years, and we keep saying it every time we drill down in the numbers, we keep saying it to the population, we keep saying it in Parliament, that this is a con job. These budgets that Imbert has been presented in this country has been a con job on the country and taking the populations for fools. His numbers never add up. His numbers are never correct. They just put in numbers where they feel they want to fool the population, but never achieve anything. So you're correct, Mikee K, that this is if you look at the different in the development plans, they would stick in numbers and have these programs saying that they're going to do these things. And when you drill down in the numbers that we have been doing in the last 3 days, you see that they have not achieved anything even in last year's fiscal that they said they were going to do. They have not achieved maybe 75% of the things that they said they were going to do, they didn't do. Because either they cannot deliver, which they have not delivered to this country in the last 9 years, or they just don't have the money to do these things. And he's doing con jobs on the numbers and the public. I'll give you an example. We came in mid-year review in June the 4th this year for a mid-year where the Minister of Finance is asking for more money. All right, he came and asked for about $2.3 billion, and that would have driven up his deficit to somewhere about $9 billion. And I'll come back to the deficit story. One of those, out of the 2.3, $500 million was to cater for additional fuel subsidy. All right, so that the fuel subsidy, based on the mid-year review, they came and asked for $500 million more to add to what they had appropriated or asked for at the beginning of 2024. So they had asked for $500 million for fuel subsidy. They came in mid-year review on June the 4th to ask for another $500 million. So they would have said they would have spent $1 billion on fuel subsidy. When the numbers came out in the budget and in the different heads under fuel subsidy for the year 2024, they spent only $470 million. So we have been asking, just like the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissessa has been asking, just like how the Auditor General has been asking, where has the money gone? Because we came and appropriated and approved an additional $500 million for fuel subsidy. And today in his SFC, I am asking Minister Young, but we came last year in June to ask for additional 500. Your numbers today should have said at least $1 billion was spent in 2024 for fuel subsidy, because you keep telling the country, you know, we helping you, we have this hefty fuel subsidy, and in the numbers of 2024, the only amount that was spent, based on the numbers in the book, is $470 million. So where did the additional $530 million go that we approved? It did not go in fuel subsidy because it didn't reflect any numbers. So this is what I'm saying to this country. And the opposition leader has been saying, Inbert's numbers is not adding up. They're hiding the numbers. They're not telling the true picture of what is really going on in our country. And I keep saying it, and I said it on your show previously, Mikee K. I keep saying, and I said to you before this budget was presented, I said to you, if you remember, that on budget day, the night or the next morning, these gurus, these economists, these accounting firms will go out and say glowing things about this budget, and they just do not analyze what is in front of them, or they do not even analyze or criticize what has happened in the last 12 months. And they will go on, and it's so said, so done. They came out on the 1st of October and praised Inbert's budget, you know, and say glowing things about it, and yet no one could give any substance. These gurus cannot give any substance what they praise Inbert's budget about. But I will tell you, they do it because they are fearful of this administration to speak out against this administration. So what they do, they say glowing things, and they really know that it is not, it does the maths and not maths.
Well, I mean, when you take into consideration everything that you've just said there, many of us wonder sometimes how it is that some of these chamber bosses, and I'm not calling anyone in particular, but a lot of these chamber bosses, as you said, would applaud these presentations, but taken away from the fact that it doesn't reflect the reality that we as citizens are living. It doesn't. So it makes you wonder, where do these people live? I mean, what are they seeing that we are not seeing? Is it business opportunities? Is it a matter of tax waivers? What is it that these chambers... okay, so we understand that the fact of the matter is many of them believe they can be blacklisted and their businesses can be hurt. But don't we pay a price for this in the long term?
We do pay a price for it. And this is where the equity is not just in this country, because these same chamber bosses, these same accounting firms, these gurus, these economists that they come out, when we were in power, or the PP government was in power between 2010 and 2015, they had no fear about speaking their mind on anything in respect to the PP government and their policies. They used to criticize it on a daily basis. basis without any fear of repercussions. But why is it now when it is so blatant? It is so blatant that the productivity or the these budgets that this administration is presented, they're not doing anything in our economy. Nothing is happening in our economy. You look at Forex. You look at just the foreign exchange, Mikey, which is a perennial problem over the last 9 years with this administration. And every year it gets worse and worse to be able to survive in this country, to run your businesses. Yet these same chambers, these same business people, these same gurus do not say anything in criticizing this present government as a simple thing of foreign exchange. Another powerful thing is our Heritage and Stabilization Fund that inward keeps raiding and taking out money. All right? Yet nothing is being said to criticize this government for doing that. But if it was any other government, they would say that, they're not finding they should be growing the country, they should be growing revenues, they should be doing other things instead of taking out from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So I am not surprised that nothing has happened with the budget, because it became a read about it for 5 hours and 12 minutes. And literally at the end of that, Mikee K, nothing has changed in our country. Nothing will change once this administration is there. Once this administration. And what is so sad, Mikee K, is that the opposition leader presented on October the 4th for 3 hours, and she presented substance. She presented policies, Mikee K. Policies and ideas. And do you know, I am yet to hear anything from those chambers about the leader opposition's policies and ideas. And that is where the inequality or the unfairness by these people in this country against the opposition. And yet I have to sit down and listen day in, day out from these same people that the opposition is weak, the opposition is not doing anything. But yet they would not criticize or even analyze properly what this government is doing to our country.
Well said. I must agree with you on that. Also here on the news this evening about this Aluminium Venture. I believe it was $5 million. Is that to actually start an aluminum industry, or is this just a committee that needs to be funded?
No, you remember. You see, again is the antics. I asked the question. There were two heads that they came and they appropriated money in. There was about $5 million under Aluminium Limited. And when I asked the Minister of Energy what this money is for, because it's a new item, he said, well, it's about part of the whole diversification trust that they spoke about, and now that the companies are getting ready, this is the operational cost. Now, I don't know, and I have to find out more, that if this is not, you remember, back in 2015-16, when the Prime Minister was talking about the aluminium plant to make aluminium car wheels. You remember that? Rims, a rim factory.
Yeah.
I do not know if that is what Minister Young, after 9 years, this thing is now ready to be commercialized, meaning ready to go to market. And I knew this aluminium rim factory was built. There was an investor, I think, from some part of South America who was invested in this thing with the government, because the Prime Minister made a song and a dance about the diversification of manufacturing rims in this country, and it would grow the economy, and you would get foreign exchange and so forth. But I know that plant, that is the plant. I know it had a lot of issues and problems and financial issues. So I do not know now if the government went in it in a bigger way, and this is where the cost is going to be. So we will ask more questions, because I don't think it's the aluminium smelter that it has the name Alutrin. But I think it is really the rim factory, this aluminium rim factory that the Prime Minister.
And that's 5 million TT. Is that?
5 million TT is 5 million TT. So it's a small amount. It's a small amount. It's supposed to be because we do not own. The government does not own that Alutrin Limited
Right.
100%. Because I asked Minister Young that today if we own it outright, and he said no, we own part of it. We own maybe a majority share. So there's a lot more in that. I just raised it this evening, but there are a lot more that I will get to the meat of it. But again, it is nothing of it's another song and dance.
Yeah, I don't think that was even mentioned in the budget presentation.
No, you would not have seen it because it's like hidden away unless you get drilled down into the different heads of like Ministry of Energy that you will drill down and you would see it there sitting waiting for you to ask a question and you could have missed it if you went too fast.
I think it's being labeled as far as diversification of the economy, and there we go again. Now we're being told 2027. We have basically hitched our economic wagon onto this dragon gas part of the energy sector. But tell us, I mean, based on your expertise, there's a difficulty when it comes to forecasting the future of energy. There's so many players. You have technology, geopolitics, you have climate change. All of these things play a factor. It's difficult to predict. But are we in a situation where we have reached, we have done the work, and 2027 there's some sort of guarantee that this thing can be accomplished?
I don't know. Well, let me be kind and say I do not know what work this government did in respect to give us hope that 2027, 2028 we will witness some sort of boom in our country. And let me dovetail that by saying, Mikey, that one of the biggest things that this government has done, Minister Young and Prime Minister Rowley, they have hitched themselves to the Venezuelan government, Maduro. They have hitched themselves to Del Zero GS. And they have hitched themselves and the country on geopolitics. To the detriment, and I have said it before on your program, it is all well and good to do those things, to try and get gas from Venezuela. But also, we within our borders, our own territorial waters, we have oil and gas. And if over the last 9 years, this government has really incentivized our energy companies to continue the drilling and finding and exploration of oil and gas, then we would be in a much better picture today economy-wise. And if your geopolitics bear fruit with the Venezuelan government in 2027, 2028, that's a plus. That's a lanyard and augurs well for our country, augurs well for our economy and for our people. But you cannot sacrifice everything and play the geopolitics over the last 9 years and to the detriment of our own waters, to our own territorial borders, to our energy companies, to keep incentivizing them to keep drilling and creating jobs in our country, to the detriment of the geopolitics in Venezuela. And this is what this government has done. They have saddled everything with the Venezuelan government. And they have literally, and I said, gone in bed with the Venezuelan government. And they are now hoping in 2027, 2028, if there no geopolitics plays out, everything goes well, then we will get the gas from Venezuela in 2027, 2028. Because gas doesn't just come so when you turn a button. You have to lay the pipes, you have to do the drilling, you have to do the exploration. Things can happen. But what they are doing right now, if you read the media, and they talked about a survey ship is in the country and they're going to go over in the dragon gas to do surveying and so forth. And what Young and this government is doing is giving the impression to, remember the American government still has sanctions over the Venezuelan government, okay? And what they are doing is, in my humble view, they have given the impression that all this activity is ramping up and taking place because they know a USA government election, a USA election is due on November the 4th. And if Trump wins and becomes the next president of the United States, that you do not know what his policies would be on the Venezuelan government and the Maduro regime. He can turn up more greater sanctions on the Venezuelan regime of Maduro.
Yeah, and you're right, and those are the factors. The politics does play as one of the factors, so it's hard.
It is one of the biggest factors.
It's hard to predict. One economist said that even if the dragon was to materialize, we won't see gas well beyond 2028. And the volume would only be sufficient to maintain current demand capacity. So there'll be no surplus gas for sector growth. That equals to no new employment creation. So basically a pie in the sky. Here is where we are. It's a pie in the sky. There are many factors. It's hard to predict, compounded with the fact that even if it does get started, let's say beyond 2028, it's not going to be enough to put out there as far as a surplus for us to see anything that we can really benefit from.
And the reason for that, as I said just a while ago, is that if the government had continued doing the work with the energy companies in our own territorial waters, and if you do get the additional gas from Venezuela in 27, 28, it will be additional and we will be in a better picture from an economic point of view. So the question I keep asking, what does the country do? What does the population, you and I and your viewers and your listeners out there do between now and 2027, 2028?
Try to stay alive, keep your head above water.
That's right.
Yeah.
We just try. They are saying, hold strain and try to tread water. That's what the Prime Minister said the other day. We will be in difficult times in the next 2 to 3 years. So what he is saying, tread water and give us the confidence to put them back. They will do a better job. And I said in my budget, you destroy the economy in the last 9 going into 10 years. What you will do anything different in 2028? Would you do it? Your track record is horrendous over the last 9 going into 10 years. What you will do different? That if you get an extra gas from Venezuela, what would you do? And how do we survive in the meantime? Would the harvest get more and the nuts get less? Would we see, our social programs that are cut back, or and you could talk all the list of social programs that we have as a country, and a lot of our population depends on that for survival. Is it now going to cut back because they don't have the revenues until 28, 27, 28? Mikee, but I want to say something. All these ramping up stories that this Minister of Energy is talking about with the Shell and so forth, there are people, I want to say it here tonight, there are people in this country right now will be making millions just based on this stupidity of ramping up to give the impression that we're doing things with Venezuela and buying pipes and laying down pipe in parts of Mayaro and lands, and so there are people are making millions of dollars just out of this PRM. I think people in this country really don't know what this government is doing here. There are people, just that public relations stunt that is taking place. And that is the reason there are millions are being made by people who have invested in this geopolitical strategy that this government is doing. So don't think that people not making money by just this thing. Even if it fails, they will make money. Even if it fails, they will make money.
Yeah, they will benefit. And let me ask you this final here. I mean, since the closure of Petroleum, there have been reports that people who have never been in this industry before have found their way in there and benefiting. I mean, that says quite a lot. Well, were many of these contractors bought out, and now you just simply have a handful of people monopolizing what's taking place with, of course, the Heritage Petroleum and so forth?
Let me say 2 things before I end with you in your program tonight. Heritage Petroleum, which is one of the 3 companies or 4 companies that this government set up and they destroyed and they shut down Petroleum. Heritage Petroleum, and I said it on the show, is really Trinma, what you and I know it as. It is the production side of what we call Petroleum, or what was Petroleum. Trinma was a success story, was a successful unit for Petroleum. All right, it was the production side. All Heritage did is that they changed the name from Trinma and they formed a company called Heritage. They sent home, they fire everybody so they don't have to pay the union rates and so forth. So they brought in scab labor, and I use the word scab labor respectfully. They brought in people and they paid them at less rates than what they were being paid by Petroleum. Okay? And they have not been able, let me tell you, say it here in your program, the numbers are there. All the success talk that Minister Young and Prime Minister Rowley and Minister of Finance is talking about Heritage Petroleum, they have not up to the day after, since the closure of Petroleum in 2018, they have not been able to produce more oil than what Trinma was producing. So even with the cheaper labor, right, they have not produced more oils and barrels per day than when Trinma was in operation, Mikee K. So while you will show a financial statement as Heritage alone making profits, because they're not carrying the load of any debt, because the government has hived off all the debt and they have started a clean company from zero debt called Heritage Petroleum. So they're supposed to make a profit. They're supposed to make a profit, but their oil production is not higher. They're not producing more oil than what Trinma was producing when they were in charge underneath Petroleum. And I want to say in closing, they shut down Petroleum, Mikee K. And those Petroleum retirees are now stressed out. They are worried because that pension fund is not healthy. That pension fund is run by and controlled by Republic Bank Limited. They are in charge of they are the trustees of the pension fund. But you would remember, this pension fund that was there, that is the life of these retirees, have not been getting any money coming into that pension fund because there are no employees. So there are no pension contributions from employees if the company was alive. So what that pension fund has to grow on is the investments that Republic Bank would have invested in and earning a return. So from our information, I have the actual report. The pension plan is in deficit, and this government has to fund that deficit, which they have not been doing. Right? So this is a problem for those pensioners, the retirees of Petroleum who are dependent for a livelihood on that pension. And I understand in September, for the first time in September, the pension payments for the retirees came late. It came a couple of days late, which is not the norm. And the pensioners got worried because if this is a sign of things to come. So I asked this, I raised this in my budget. The Minister of Finance in his wind-up did not respond. I will be filing more questions in the Parliament to get some answers on behalf of those pensioners that put their sweat, life, and blood into what we know as Petroleum, and now they are scared, they are worried that their pension plan is in jeopardy.
Yeah,
this is a serious
yeah. When it starts off like that, people do get concerned. I mean, we're hearing that OJTs, are being paid late. When it starts that, it creates a trend, and then it gets bad. So you're right. I hope these pensioners definitely get their money. It's really important. On this topic, I'm going to let you go, but we're not here to sell doom and gloom. But when you start to look at this budget and look at the components and look at everything, really and truly, what are we looking at? I mean, we simply just cannot be living to keep our heads above water.
Mikee K, what really and truly, in this government, this administration doesn't have the political will to make things happen in our country. I go through, and before I end, if you go through these kind of, what was scary and popped out to me over the last 3 days, Mikee K, in this SFC, when you drill down any numbers, you know what struck me? That this government is in its final year, has appropriated, has allocated, they have allocated funds to build buildings. Somehow this government loves to build buildings, and I'll give you 2 buildings that they have allocated millions of dollars to build. To start, they wouldn't complete in 1 year, but to at least start a new spanking multi-story building for the Election and Boundaries Commission, all right, around the savannah, somewhere, you know, close to where Cape Hotel is.
Yeah.
They have an allocation of a land there, and they're going to build a spanking new Election and Boundaries Commission building. Another multi-story building is for the Ministry of Social Welfare, the Ministry of Social and Development. Now, why you want to, we are catching our nenen, as they say in our country. Revenues are not there, but you are allocating and appropriating funds for new construction, new buildings that does not generate any revenue or sustainability for the country at this point in time. There's another building that they're building for UDCOT, a headquarters for UDCOT. There are about at least 5 buildings for different ministries, official offices that they are building in this go-over season. What is the priority? What are the priorities of this present government? Why do you want to build buildings in this point, in this go-over season, when the Prime Minister is saying hold strain until 2027, 2028, but yet you are allocated monies, millions of dollars to build ministry headquarters? Why are you doing that? Who benefits from that?
So true. We simply just have to look on and do what has to be done. But again, you know, when you start to connect the dots, really and truly, it makes you wonder, how did we get here? Why are we in this current position? And what does the future hold for Trinidad and Tobago? These are questions that, I think we know why we got here. Voting has consequences. There's consequences to voting. Why we haven't been able to be navigated out of this situation? Well, I think you said it. This government lacks the will. That perhaps is not their priority. That's not their main objective. But at the same time, we as citizens need to understand and be conscious enough to understand that these things are not going to change unless we, as those in the massive amount, say, listen, enough is enough. Enough is definitely enough.
So just to add before you begin, the political will or the wickedness this government is doing to the population. There's a road improvement area from Shogunas flyover to Chase Village flyover. You know where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where Sierra Rahman. That is maybe what, 1.5 miles, 2 miles, if that much. And we have the population, thousands of people have been suffering for nearly a year just to get that road improvement done. And this government cannot make that happen. They cannot even do a road improvement that will help the traffic situation. We have been suffering for nearly a year, right there in a 1 mile stretch, that this government does not have the political will to make it happen. And you are going to tell me, wait and give them another chance for another term, another 5 years in 2025? They cannot even do that 1 mile construction to make your life better. They're going to make your life better in 2027, 2028. Never, it will not happen. They don't have the political will. They take us as fools, Mikee K. They have taken us as fools, Mikee K. And I will end on that.
Thank you so much for taking time out and linking with us. As always, very insightful. And we just see what happens. We have to play it out. Thank you so much again. Best of luck to you and your entire team, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Mikee.